Rockefeller's Ruchir Sharma out with a new op-ed in the Financial Times today. Quote, is Trump the king of deregulation? Looking at a key issue that could matter for business owners in the 2024 election. Joining us now to discuss is Ruchir Sharma. He is also the author of the new book, What Went Wrong with Capitalism. Ruchir, it's great to have you back on the show. Let's start right there. You dug into the data. What did you find?
Yeah. So I think that this is one of the very key issues currently bogging down capitalism, which is that the regulatory state, which is the way it's grown in the last 2 or 3 decades, that America has been adding roughly 3,000 new regulations a year. And the total number of regulations that it's withdrawn over the last 20 years is 20 in total. So what I did here was that Trump is basing his campaign a lot on being the king of deregulation in a way, to look at the data. And the data said, yes, that under him, the cost of businesses in terms of new regulations did come down quite significantly, and especially compared to the Biden administration, where the costs have gone up incredibly at new records. Under Trump in his first term, the cost did come down, but it was nowhere as close to what he claims, because he's still implemented lots of regulations. So I think that what America needs today is a much greater streamlining of the regulatory process, or we are all, in a way, dying a death by 1,000 paper cuts, as someone put it.
I mean, it's a key point, and I think one of the things that former President Trump has been campaigning on and has talked about is shrinking government, which is perhaps even more salient on a day where we have the U.S. national debt hitting $35 trillion. It really speaks to how much we're spending and how much government activity is out there, I guess, in the economy. So how does this continue to evolve? Do we know yet what Vice President Harris, what her campaign would be around this? Or is the expectation that maybe it's going to be very similar to what we've seen with current President Biden?
Yeah, she hasn't said much on economic issues. So I think that the default assumption has to be that's going to be a continuation of what President Biden has done. And the two issues I have with that under the Biden administration, one is the regulatory state, that the regulations exploded under Biden like no precedent before. And also that one of the big legacies of the Biden administration, as you point out, is that hardly any precedent in history has taken on so much debt to produce this kind of growth. So I know there's been a lot of talk that economic growth has been quite decent under President Biden, which is a fact. But if you look under the hood, the amount of debt that has been piled on the public debt side to generate that growth is nearly unprecedented, especially outside of a recession or a depression or a war. We have never seen such an accumulation of debt as a share of GDP virtually as we have seen under President Biden. And that is something which does concern me, both for the future and, as I've argued in the book as well, that the last 30 to 40 years, the single biggest reason why productivity growth in America has been declining are the suite of government habits, whether it's debt or it's the increase in regulation. So someone who tackles that will really be tackling a core issue that's been bogging down the American economy over the last few decades, which is declining productivity growth.
Well, can we really tackle the debt issue without tackling the issue of spending more than we take in? There's a question about how we're going to end up taking in as much as we need to, right?
Absolutely. But I think what's happened now is that we're in a totally different zip code, because if you look at America's history, for the first 200 years of America's economic history, America rarely ran a budget deficit. Then from the 1970s, it became a habit for America to run budget deficits. We've in fact run a budget surplus for just 5 years of those 50 years or so. Now is the third phase, I feel, where the budget deficit has gone into a totally different zip code, which is that we're running a budget deficit now of 6 to 7% of GDP, far higher than any other developed country in the world today. And the problem is this, that if you have a downturn or a recession, that deficit as a share of GDP could easily get up to 9 to 10% of GDP. And this brings me to the second sort of aspect of what we're going to discuss today, that makes it very hard for the Fed to cut interest rates too aggressively or for long-term interest rates to decline when the funding requirements are so large. So I think we're finally reaching that stage now where the deficit begins to impact interest rates after that having seemed like a false alarm for so long.